So what questions have you got today?
I was actually just wondering if you could give me any pointers for things that would be very valuable to study, specific problems or chapters, or maybe even like specific functions in Python that would be good to study for the test.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm going to do that more fully tomorrow because I don't really have all my notes together on that. But there's going to be something from every chapter. So we start with the functions. Okay, so with functions, well, first, just overall some things. You want to make sure that you're always using your main function in all your programs. You want to make sure you have comments, and you want to make sure you're identifying what exceptions that you need to capture and that you're capturing those with the try block. Okay. But then further on the functions, you want to make sure that you're able to identify the preconditions and the postconditions, check those out. Remember, the postconditions we can use the assert on, and then the assertion error we can do an exception for. Okay. Make sure you're good with being able to send things into the function as parameters and then to return things back from the function. And remember, we get into lists. Lists are live when you send them to a function, so you have to make a copy of them or whatever you do there. Okay. And then the next chapter on files, just understand the basics of being able to open a file, read a file, write a file. Nothing really special there, except to remember that every line in the file has to have a new line character added to it when you're writing to a file. And when you're bringing stuff back in from a file, you have to strip that out, that new line character out. What else about files? Files have the IO error. That's the exception you have on those. So you want to make sure you're capturing the IO exception error. That's about it with files. Make sure you close your files. You can lose some points on that. Okay. Then the next chapter was on lists. So I'm not sure what's on the cheat sheet, but if the functions that are not there that you'll need to go ahead and memorize those. Okay. With a list, you can create a blank list with the two brackets. You can then go through and append items to it, or you can use the multiplication feature to create a list of all zeros and then replace the items. Okay. Remember that lists are mutable, which means you can change the content without rewriting the whole thing. So there's that. Again, sending to functions is problematic. You got to make a copy of them. When you make a copy, remember, you can't just say A is equal to B. You've got to say A is equal to B, bracket, colon, bracket, to do the whole thing. Okay. Should be familiar with slices. Slices work with lists and tuples and strings all the same way. Yeah, then the other functions, you can replace stuff. You can always do an in and a not in to see if something's in the data structure, whether it's a list or a tuple or a string. You can do a for of some variation, a for loop for all those three. Okay, remember, if you want to make changes to a list, which you can do because they're mutable, you have to do a while loop where you keep track of the index yourself so you can make changes to the list as you go along. Okay. And that's more or less it. Tuples are just like lists, except they can't change internally. You can always make new ones and you can concatenate that way. But all the functions that work for lists work for tuples unless it changes the internal structure. So you can't do a replace and you can't do an append, but the other ones all work and the slicing works the same. Okay. And then with strings, I think the big thing with strings, just remembering the idea that we often start with a blank string and then go through with a for loop, like the for ch in string. And with each character, we're going to do something with it and then concatenate that to the blank string that you're doing. Okay, so that's really that's the basic idea behind strings. We've seen a lot of those. Okay, strings are immutable also. And that's really the big thing. There's no one problem that you should work on. I would look at all the homework problems, make sure you understand them, make sure you can do them pretty quickly. And if you have questions, you can definitely ask now, or you can send me a message. You can ask me to do a video. That's okay. We're having the review tomorrow, so you can ask tomorrow in class for me to do whatever, and we should be good. Okay, is that helpful? You have other questions specifically, Jack?
No, that covered it. Thank you.
Okay. What else you guys want to know? You have to have questions. No, the question is, are there 4 programming questions for each chapter? No, there's going to be 4 total. Okay, but they're probably going to combine. There's not going to be a list question and a tuple question and a function question. There'll be questions that involve all of those things and could involve files. And again, everything will have to have exceptions when they're applicable.
So are you saying, will programs with files, lists, are they going to all be individual, or will there be a problem where they're kind of combined?
I think they're going to be kind of combined. There may be a focus to one, one thing, but I mean, you're going to have a main function in all of them for sure. And I doubt there's just a file. So I mean, if you're dealing with a file, you're dealing with strings because you have to write strings and all that. So yeah, it's hard to separate out. There may be a main thrust of a program, but it's not going to be just one thing. Okay. Other questions? Again, when you look at the homework problems, especially one like the chapter 814 on the gas prices, that is more convoluted than I would give on an exam. Okay. On an exam, I just want to make sure you've got the basic skills down and not something that you may have to think about for a long time. Okay. So it's certainly that requires a lot of steps that I wouldn't require on an exam. Okay. So what else you guys want to know?
It's not so much as a question about the final. It's more of a question about the Moodle. Like I texted you and told you about how my situation is right now, quarantine, and I just got cleared, so I'll be released to come back to classes tomorrow.
Okay, good.
But,
so exam on Friday. That's good.
Yes, and I was looking on Moodle, and it won't pop up for week 10. I don't know, like maybe it's just not working or just not.
That's
For week 10. Yeah.
Let me take a
Like
look.
week 9, I got all the way up until video worked through the low shoe magic square test, and that's it. Like
it may be hidden. So let me check. Real quick. I see it all whether it's hidden or not. So I sometimes forget that it's not hidden. Let's see what it's doing. Oh, there's nothing on week 10 yet. Yeah, there's nothing there yet. Yeah, I'll need to release that, but there was no homework from Monday.
okay, yeah, I was kind of freaking out a little bit. I was looking, I was like, oh crap, like maybe it's not working. That's not good.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why there's nothing there.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll open that up now. And I'll put recording this. I didn't record the first session, sadly, but I will record this one in the 2 o'clock session, and I'll put that up there. But yeah, there was no homework from chapter 9 yet. We'll get homework from chapter 9 when we finish it on Monday. Okay. Yeah, it's out there now. Other questions about anything? So as far as things you're likely to need to do, again, there's going to be a string problem, but it's going to be one that doesn't require as much thought maybe as the ones in the book. But remember, the general idea there is that you typically are going to have a string that you're basing stuff on. You're going to create another string, a blank string for the answer you're creating. You're then going to do a for loop to go through the initial string and make some change and write out the changes by concatenation to the second string. And then at the end, you're going to save the first string as a second string. Okay, so that's a that's an important concept that's kind of the same for all of the string problems. Okay. So what else do you have questions on? Again, if you think of something later, you want me to do a video on a homework problem, I'll do whatever homework problem you want, even if it's one that's not assigned. And that's a good thing to look at problems that weren't assigned. If you have the ones down that were assigned and you feel you understand them, and again, work on them enough until you understand every line. It's important that you understand what's happening so you can apply it to other programs, and that you can do it in a reasonably fast fashion. It's about training your brain to think algorithmically, to move. I think a lot of you are having problems moving from the program description into the program code. It's that algorithm step, okay? And I would certainly have some scratch paper for the exam tomorrow, so you can sketch out ideas, sketch out the data structure, sketch out what it is that you're doing. And I think that'll make things go a little bit easier, okay? But again, if you're working a problem that we weren't assigned, that I didn't assign in class, it's not because it was a bad problem. It's just that, you know, we don't have time to do everything. So if you see one, I don't know what we didn't do. I don't think we did number 5 in chapter 8, the alphabetic telephone number translator. Look at that program, see if you can do it. And if you can't, ask me to do a video on it. I don't mind doing that at all until I run out of time. But yeah, I can certainly create any of those. I don't create videos for all the homework problems because if people aren't going to watch them, there's no need for me to take the time to do it. But if somebody requests it, I will certainly do anything that you guys want to do if I have time. Okay. So what other questions do you have? Remember, you can use the cheat sheet. You can't add to it though. So I don't remember right off if it has, I guess I could look, whether it has all the stuff from lists and strings and all that. If it does, great. If not, you'll just have to memorize those. So I think that cheat sheet's enough. Take a look at it here. And again, the cheat sheet, you have to have it in your hand as you go along. Let's see here. The delete is on there for lists. What else has it got? It's got the slice stuff on there pretty much, which is useful. It's got the length function. Okay. Yeah, operations on lists are there, and which is good. At least the append, extend, which we haven't done, but you can use that if you want. There's insert, remove, pop, sort, and reverse are all listed there. There's some stuff here about functions, how those work, how a function call works. There's all the operators on strings there. So there's the strip, the R strip, L strip. There's the starts with, ends with. There's some we haven't covered. There's a section on files, what the file open looks like. Encoding, don't worry about, we don't do that, but all the read write append modes are all there. Again, it doesn't explain what they do necessarily, but it does show you what the syntax looks like, so you won't forget those words. Okay, so yeah, it looks like most of the things are there, so it shouldn't require any memorization to speak of. It's more, again, and that's good. That's why I'm letting you use that. This class is a skill class, not a knowledge class. What you need to know for this class, what fits on the cheat sheets as far as knowledge, but that's not what you need. What you need are the skills to use them. You know, it's just like with woodworking. I mean, knowing the basic operation of how a saw works is trivial. Anybody can learn that. But being able to use that saw to create complex projects, that's where the skill comes in. Okay, so you can learn knowledge by reading and listening to lectures, but you only learn a skill by doing it. So there's no way to test it, but I'm going to guess that there's a strong correlation between the time spent programming and your grades in the class. Okay. I would also caution you, and I've heard some of you have told me you're doing this. If you Google, you know, for an answer to a homework question, you may get the homework question done, but they're often using techniques that we don't cover. Most programming languages are very expressive, and you can write the same program 100 ways. But in my experience, it's better to know one way to do something. You're not going to keep in your mind 15 ways to do something. So find one way and use it until it's not good enough anymore. You need something else. So be very cautious if you go online that you're going to end up confusing yourself even more by doing things you don't know. And remember, you can't turn anything in, or let's put it this way, everything you turn in, I could ask you, say, well, what does this line do? And if you don't know, that tells me that you just copied it somewhere without any knowledge. Okay, so make sure every line of every program that you do, you understand why it's happening. But if not, ask me now before the exam, and I'll be happy to explain it. Same thing with any of my examples. Okay. So what else do you want to know?
Would you say that chapter 7 is probably the most like the best homework problems to study, because that probably integrates like the most stuff we learned throughout the unit?
7, yeah, because I think that if you know 7, you'll know lists and tuples, and you'll also have a pretty good idea about strings because they're very similar. And I think that, as I think I said it in your class, I said it in at least 2 of the classes, I think that learning the data structures really is the next step in our evolution as programmers. That up through test 1, we were doing just the basic coding, which most of you have down. So now we're learning to use the data structures. So by going through 7, I think that 7 is a really good place to start for sure. Okay, but they're all important. I mean, I'm hoping that 5 on functions, that you've internalized them enough now by doing the homework problems. Those of you that have been doing the homework problems, that they're starting to make sense to you. Okay. Again, the thing that you need to remember that we don't always do on the homework, and I don't always take points off of homework, but I will on the exam, is you have to explicitly tell me what are the preconditions and the postconditions of your function. You have to test for those where you can. Okay, so that's where you can get fouled up on functions. Okay, files, I mean, files are, I think, relatively straightforward, it seems like to me, but I've dealt with files for a long time. Maybe you haven't. So you need to understand the concept there. I had somebody in the first class ask the question about what the whole in file, out file. Okay, remember those are just variables, but instead of pointing to a memory location, because of the open command, they point to a file on the hard drive or on some drive. Okay, so they're named just like variables. I always name them in file and out file because it's not worth it for me to have to remember what I've called it. But you can name them whatever you want. There's no right or wrong answer there. Okay. So yeah, you need to be aware of that. And remember that the files have the IO error on the exception. There are people that are going to lose points because they don't put exceptions. So don't do that. When your program's done, and I usually write the program entirely before I deal with the exceptions. If you want to do it the other way around, feel free, but I'll write a program, get it working. I'll highlight the whole thing, hit the tab key, add a try, and then I'll go through. Am I using the int or the float function? If so, I need a value error exception. Am I using a list or a tuple? Or am I using the individual elements of a string? If so, I need the index error. Is there a file? I need the IO error. Okay. And there's one other one that I'm forgetting. Yeah, I forget what the other one is, but yeah, just look through to see if you have those. It never hurts to have an exception that you don't need. And if in doubt, put the exception there. I won't take points off. And you can deal with it as little as, exception value error as ERR, print ERR. I mean, that's okay. Sometimes you'll need more than that. Remember that the except has the else and the finally that you can do if you need to. Else hits only if there are no exceptions. Finally hits no matter what. Okay. Then 8 with strings. I mean, again, if you have 7 down, 8 should be pretty easy. Just different functions, and they're all in cheat sheet. Okay. Did I answer your question, DJ?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm not going to keep you here all day if you don't have any other questions, but I would just encourage you to look at the homework. Again, it's nothing in chapter 9, so it's 5, 6, 7, and 8. Functions, files, exceptions, lists, tuples, strings. It's all there's going to be. I would go, round robin, do a program from chapter 5, and then a program from chapter 6, and then one from 7 and one from 8. Even if you've done them before, do them new. Pull up a new version of them. Do the whole thing again. and make sure you're able to do them efficiently, quickly, you understand what you're doing. Write down any questions that you have, okay? I'm doing this same thing we're doing now at 2 o'clock for my last class. There's only like 4 people in there. If you want to come back, if you have a question that develops between now and then, feel free. If not, tomorrow I'll have a prepared probably 15 minutes of stuff talking about the things that I expect you to know for the exam. And then the rest of the class tomorrow will be also for questions. So we'll be there the full class time as long as you have questions, okay? So no further questions. I did record this, so I will go ahead and put that out there here in a minute. But if not, I will see you guys in class tomorrow for the review.